So I want to talk about today and what happened today. Today is Wednesday, December 19th, and today was kind of whack. I found out last night before I was going to bed when I was just on Instagram scrolling through. One of my friends had posted about this threat that was targeted at our school district. It didn't seem like a big deal because unfortunately we get threats all the time, and that's just something that happens really often. I found out about that one threat last night. A couple people posted about it, and then I had sort of forgotten about it, and I show up to school this morning, and I hadn't really thought twice about it originally because, again, like, it didn't seem like a huge deal. The school said they were going to have extra security and everything. I thought that just meant they were going to have like some extra security guards and everything was going to be normal. I got to school and got into class, normal, totally forgot about the whole thing that happened. Over the intercom, the announcements start up, and they're talking about how the whole school is going to be in lockout for the whole day. Lockout is basically where they lock all of the doors to the perimeter of the school to keep out someone who's outside of the building. It's not the same as a lockdown. So everyone in the school, in the building, was pretty much allowed to move around freely, but to leave the building you had to like go through people, and like they had people at every exit, basically every entrance and exit. We just went through stagecraft normally. Like, a couple people were talking about leaving, but I was like, I mean, I don't really see the big deal. Stagecraft went fine. We were just doing work like normal, and then because that class was in the building, I hadn't really noticed that anything was really happening. But my next class was out in the portables, which you have to go outside for. There were guards. I mean, I wouldn't say guards. They were administrators. So just staff members were standing outside of the door that leads to the portables. That was just kind of like spooky, I guess. Oh, and in stagecraft was when I found out that there was another threat directed towards our school specifically, which made it a little bit scarier, but again, it's nothing new. My mom had texted me like, are you okay? Do you want to leave? Will you be fine to stay at school, or what do you want to do? And at first I texted her, I was like, I'll be fine. Like, I get to leave at 11:30 anyway because I had early release. So I was like, I'll leave super early anyway. I'll be totally fine. I know this could have been a lot worse because there was, I think, a similar threat. I don't remember what kind of threat it was. Just like a couple weeks ago at the middle school that I went to, which was insane to hear about. And they had a lockdown, and it wasn't a lockout like we had. They had a lockdown for the whole day, and kids didn't get home until like 9 at night. I heard that they wouldn't let anybody leave any of the rooms. They wouldn't let kids get any of their stuff, so they had to leave all their stuff there. They weren't really feeding them much. They were forced to pee in trash cans in their classroom. Like, it just horror stories. I've heard a lot about that whole situation, and so that also sort of scared me because I just had a bad feeling about the whole day, and I just was not feeling like good about the whole thing. Like, you know, I just had an off feeling, and luckily my feeling was wrong, which thank God, but it was still really scary. I felt like since that was started by a threat and this was started by a threat, I felt like since they're taking it a lot more serious now, I assumed, I felt like maybe we could have gone into lockdown, and I did not want to be there when that happened. because of what I heard about that other school that had that. At this point, I was already in my next class, in the portables, and my teacher started talking about how we were not allowed to leave whatsoever, like not allowed to leave the classroom because it was in a portable, and if you leave, then you're outside. And if we wanted to leave, if it was an absolute emergency, then he would have to call the office, and they would have to send an escort, a security escort, which again was just administrators, to the classroom to pick you up and then take you to the office. That made me feel really trapped, just him saying that. And I know he wasn't meaning to say that like that and like make people scared, but he was just trying to inform us of the rules and what we could and could not do, which totally makes sense, and I don't blame him whatsoever. But him saying that made me feel so trapped, and that's like the big thing for me with my anxiety. That's like the big triggering thing I'm starting to figure out, is that I just can't feel trapped. I have to know in my mind that I'm allowed to leave a room if I'm there. Like I have to know that if I leave, I won't be stopped. The fact that I knew that if I left, I would get in trouble or something could happen, that terrified me. I knew I couldn't leave, which scared me, and that immediately like gave me a lump in my throat, and I was like, I couldn't breathe really. And this girl who sits on my table, she's super sweet, but she like watched me like take off my jacket and like my sweatshirt really aggressively because like I couldn't breathe, so I had to like take off my sweatshirt, and I put up my hair, and I was like fiddling with it like this. Like I do this a lot when I get anxious, and I like do this with my neck, and I scratch my neck and rub my neck, or I like do that with my knuckles. But she noticed me like taking off my sweatshirt really like quickly and like sort of going like this, and she was like from across the table, like, "You okay?" I was like, "I'm just having a panic attack," you know, super naturally, because I know she also struggles with anxiety. It was very noticeably like I was fidgeting, I was moving around, very restless, and I just couldn't stay still. So I was starting to feel like, you know, at my breaking point. At this point, it had probably been, I want to say 5 minutes, which is one of the longest panic attacks I've ever had, I think. Usually they last like a minute. I'm not really sure though, because when you're having a panic attack, every second feels like an hour. It was getting to the point where I like couldn't handle it anymore, and if I just stayed in my seat, I would have like passed out or thrown up or something. Like I didn't know what was gonna happen, and that's the scary part. I just felt really unsafe. I was shaking a lot, and I get up and I walk over, and you know, when I'm having these attacks, anything that I do, I have no control over. Like I don't even remember telling myself I'm gonna get up now and go to my teacher, because like it just sort of happened. Like that's just what my body did, and it's really bizarre. Like it feels like you're kind of dreaming. I don't know how to explain it, but it just like everything feels off, and you don't feel like you're the place that you are, and you just feel like you need to leave. Like you just need to get out of wherever you are, and like as soon as possible, or everything is gonna go wrong. I got up and I walked over to my teacher, which is in the opposite corner, and I walk up to him shaking, and really quietly I just go, "I think I'm having a panic attack." And I'm like kind of like crying at the same time, and then of course as soon as I tell him, he's like, "Okay." Like he's super sweet. He's such a nice guy, but he just says, "Okay," very gently, and he goes to the phone to call the office to try to get me an escort. And while he's like waiting for the phone. He's like waiting on the phone, and he looks at me, and he like pushes his like rolly chair over to me, and he's like sit down, like he's gesturing for me to sit down. So I sit down in his chair, and he's trying to figure this out, and I'm crying at this point. I'm sobbing, which like I said it like I didn't want to make a scene, because like that I feel like just adds to it. So when I initially told him, I was really quiet, and I was like, I think I'm having a panic attack. And so I sat down, and then I noticed that I was crying, and I was like, shit, everyone's gonna see me crying anyway, so why the fuck try to hide it? So I just started sobbing at that point, and I was crying, and I was just looking at the trash can, and just like trying to breathe. And he was running around asking people about the call, because the office wasn't picking up phone calls, and so it was this whole deal. I don't even know how he solved it, because I wasn't paying attention. But people were offering me water. He was like, do you need water? Like, do you need anything? I was like, no, I'll be fine. I'll just sit here. My classmates were like, do you want food? Like, I have food in my bag. Like, do you need anything? And I was like, no, I'm okay, because like, again, like I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to make a scene. So like, I was just like, I'm okay, like I'll be fine. But I really appreciate their gestures and their kindness and warmth. And then these two girls, the girl that I was talking about before, who sat at my table, and her friend, they walked up to me, because they sit at my table, and they're pretty much the only friends that I have in that class. And I'm not super close with them, but it just made me feel really like supported and appreciated, that they came over to me, and they noticed that everyone noticed, but they noticed that I was like having a hard time, and since like they understand it. I'm not too sure about the other person, but I know the girl I was talking about before, like she knows, and she's been through it. So they just walked over to me, and they like squatted down next to me, and were like, it's gonna be okay. Like they were talking like logically, which I appreciate. I love logical thinking. It really helps to look at the big picture and what's actually happening and the facts of the situation when someone has anxiety over something that's happening, because usually anxiety attacks are formed from threats that aren't necessarily deadly, if that makes sense, like an irrational sort of thing. Not always. Sometimes it's definitely, like, it definitely makes sense. Like, in this case, I would say it made sense. But then also it was sort of, like, at the time, we didn't really know a whole lot, so it was mainly just me, like, making up situations in my head, which is not good when you're freaking out like this. So they were just going over, like, it's just, like, we're just doing this to protect us, like, we're safe. If anything bad were to happen, we're outside, we're in a good situation. They just talked to me, we were joking around, like, I started laughing a little bit, which is a good thing. We were joking around while my teacher was still trying to contact the office, and we were just hanging out, you know. They were making jokes, I was laughing at them. Other people who were, like, around, who sat near the area we were in, were, like, hanging out. They were making jokes. We were having a good time. It's a really good feeling when, after you feel something so incredibly, like terrifying, in you, it's just, I can't describe how, like, warm it feels when you get comforted and helped through something like that, because it's really scary, and it feels really good to have people who support you and nurture you through those sort of situations. And then eventually, one of the administrators came in and was like, "Hey, I heard we I needed an escort or something." I thought it was gonna be like one of the security guards, like one of the cops. But no, it was just an administrator. I was like, okay, that's cool. Everyone was trying to leave at the same time. I heard from someone that less than a third of the students in the whole school were actually there by the end of the day. I did film a little bit after I had left the building, which was, like, it was kind of scary just walking out because there was a line of parents outside the door. Like, there were teachers running around trying to find students that left their classrooms. It was crazy. And you can tell in the video of me after I left the building, it's so shaky, and I was so nervous. I was shaky for hours afterwards. The whole situation I just hated. I don't like this at all. I mean, I appreciate that they're taking the threats seriously, but I just can't be here. I don't even know, like, what to say. It's just a really scary time to be a student, which is really unfortunate because all we're trying to do is get our education so we can get good jobs, have good lives, but, it's crazy the kind of world that we live in right now, where it's so dangerous to go to school. And it's really disappointing that this happens so often, that we're so used to it happening